Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 13th Civil Service Commission meeting. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Hatamian.
Here.
Manukian.
Here.
Devine.
Here.
And for the record, Commissioner Gantis and Gregorian are absent.
Okay, before we get into tonight's regular agenda, I have some sad news that I have to announce that Roy Coleman passed away. He was one of our former civil service commissioners. Roy served 2 terms on this commission in 2002 to 2006 and 2007 to 2010. He also served in the United States Marine Corps during the Vietnam War, and during that time he sustained major and severe injuries and required him to carry shrapnel in his body for the remainder of his life. He received a bachelor's degree in philosophy from Loyola University, and he began his career with the state of California as a local veteran employment representative, assisting Vietnam-era veterans, particularly disabled ones, in finding employment and in both the public and private sectors. He continued his career by working as a consultant for the state of California in the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, and he spent the bulk of his career with the state as a deputy labor commissioner, conducting hearings on labor and employment claims. He is a 28-year resident of the city of Glendale, and he was an active and dedicated member of the Glendale community and was very proud of his services and accomplishments as a civil service commissioner. On a personal note, I unfortunately only knew Roy for a very short period of time when he was on the commission, and however, during that time I was very impressed by 2 of his many great qualities. First thing that impressed me was his extreme knowledge and background in personnel matters. This resulted in his many fair and impartial decisions on disciplinary issues and on his outstanding leadership as chair of this commission for a year. The other impressive thing was his dedication in fulfilling the responsibilities of this commission in spite of the extreme physical discomfort he continually had to endure. And I'm reminded that on many meetings he was in so much pain at home that he could not drive a car. And instead of canceling or not coming to the meeting, he would call Mr. Manukian, who would drive down and pick him up and bring him here so he could attend the meeting and fulfill his responsibility. I remember sitting next to him, and he was in extreme pain during these meetings, and yet no one ever knew about it. He had a smile on his face, and he talked as if nothing was wrong. That was very, very impressive. This commission truly missed Roy when he left, and now the community is going to miss him because of his passing. We extend our sympathies to his wife, Marilyn, and to his family. And for those who are able to attend, his services will be on Saturday, July 23rd at 12 noon at the Little Church of the Flowers at Forest Lawn in Glendale. And we're going to adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of Roy Coleman. And I would ask at this point if either one of the commissioners have any comments before we move on to the next item.
I mean, anybody who met Roy knew that this individual is just unbelievable. I learned so much in the brief time that I've had the opportunity to be friends with him, and just a phenomenal human being. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember when I used to go pick him up just to bring him to the Civil Service Commission meetings, just the pain that he was in, just getting him in and out of the car, but yet, there's so much that could be said. My condolences to his wife, and he was just a phenomenal human being, and just a nice man.
Okay, thank you very much.
I didn't personally know Mr. Coleman, but I know that after he went on his medical, I was an individual who was appointed to take over his position. And during that time period, individuals that I came across in the city of Glendale basically expressed to me the dedication that he had sitting as a civil service commissioner. And, I had the impression that I had very big shoes to fill. Obviously, he is an inspiration to everyone, including myself. and I believe to the younger generation in the city of Glendale. So God bless his soul, and our prayers to his families and patience.
Okay, thank you very much. Matt, Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, if I may add, I'd like to express my condolences as well on behalf of Mr. Gantis, who is away traveling at the moment. When he does return, he will express his condolences personally. But really, on a personal level, I too would like to express my appreciation for Roy Coleman. He was, as you had said, he was a two-term commissioner. I learned a great deal from him, and I think I've said it many times. He was a very, very firm man, to some degree very gruff, but really he had a sense of compassion, fairness that really, beneath the exterior, there was just a really decent man who cared about people and cared about fairness, and that's why he was such a good civil service commissioner. Aside from being just a great guy, I will say he was clearly one of the most influential civil service commissioners we've ever had on this sitting on this board. Many of the things that have been done to improve either the way this commission is run, things we deal with, even our operations within human resources were as a result of Roy's efforts and his commitments. Just a couple of the things that we see on our agenda each night, the late performance evaluations. That was something that he pushed hard to hold this organization more accountable for. At a time when it seemed like the city was going overboard in hiring hourly employees to supplant salaried employment, Roy spoke up, and we imposed some new rules to place some limits on the hourly employment. At another time when it appeared that we had these unclassified employees that were supposed to be temporary, yet some of them were lasting 5, 10, even 20 years. He pushed to make sure those individuals were treated fairly like all the other employees in the organization, and ultimately granted classified status and the protections that fall under civil service protection. So that's just a few samples of some of the things that he accomplished for this commission. So I do want to join you all in expressing my condolences and thanks for the great service that Mr. Coleman provided, not only to this commission, to the city, but as we know, to his country. So I join you in that, and I'll say, having known him, he made me a much better, just by holding me accountable and my department accountable. I think we're better people for that, and this organization is him a debt of thanks. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the first item on our agenda.
Minutes.
Move to approve dispense from reading.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chair Devine, members of the Commission, you may consider pushing this item to the next agenda. I don't think you're going to have the requisite number of affirmative votes to get this item passed.
Oh, that's right.
You are absolutely
Mr.
right.
Hatami, I'm
Thank you
listening.
very much. All right, we will carry that over to the next meeting. Thank you, Ms. Harperian. Next
Oral
item.
communications.
Okay, I have no cards. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item.
Recruitment and examination status report.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is the recruitment and examination status report. This report shows the current recruitment activity. Even though this report is a page and a half, it does demonstrate a rather low level of recruitment at the moment. In fact, if you were to walk into the HR department right now, I think we have exactly one bulletin posted, and that's a reflection of not necessarily the vacancies we have, but just the approvals and being allowed to fill them. So at this time, as we begin a new fiscal year, we're certainly keenly aware of our budget and what we're able to do as far as filling these positions. But again, this report does have the listing of recruitment activity. These are things that have already been open or will be opening at some time in the near future. any types of exams that have been scheduled, and anything that's currently in process. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. This is a note and file item.
Any comments? Okay, we'll have the next item, please.
Eligible list established.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is it's also note and file. It indicates the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting, approximately 2 weeks ago. As you can see from the report, we have 4 lists that have been established, 2 open and 2 promotional. As you see, the open recoupments typically have a larger number of applications received. The report does show in the final column, after all of the various examination processes, the total number that have made it onto the eligible list. If you have any questions on this report, I'd be happy to try and answer them, and we have staff here who can answer those questions as well.
Any questions on the list? Seeing none. Next, please.
Revised class specification for approval, accounting management series, accounting series, accounts payable supervisor, and payroll supervisor.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, the next couple of items on the agenda are revisions of class specifications. We've been, as you know, trying to update our class specifications for the past year or so, and really our effort has been to go back to those that are older, that haven't been updated in a while, or those needing in most need of being updated, and try to keep them up to date and contemporary with the changes that we see in the workplace. This accounting area, these are specifications that touch upon many different classifications, and you see both in the accounting management series in particular, and as well as the accounting series, you see quite a number of levels in the line of promotion. Not all those levels are being utilized, but they are nevertheless classifications that we may utilize at one time or another. And again, this is really just an effort to keep these updated and contemporary. And as you can see, there are 4 separate items with this one area. Again, it's the accounting management series, which are the middle management and above classifications within this accounting series. And then number 2 is the non-management accounting series, where you have the accountant 1, 2, and 3 classifications, and then you have 2 standalone specifications, an accounts payable supervisor and a payroll supervisor. At the tail end of all of these specifications is an organization chart, which has a pretty fair depiction of our finance department and how these areas are organized. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Narane Kasparian from my staff worked on these, and I believe we have Lily Fang, who's the accounting administrator, here to answer any questions as well.
Any questions?
I do have one question. It's more of a comment pertaining to the minimum requirements for all these positions that have been basically additional minimum requirements that have been added on. And it's more of a comment than anything. I think that's a good thing for the city to basically raise the bar of the minimum requirements regarding these positions. So I think, and I reviewed this, I think that's a very good, commendable job on your staff and on your behalf regarding raising the bar level of what's required in order for a prospective employee to apply for these positions.
And
That's a great change.
we agree with that, Commissioner Hatamian. Thank you.
Yeah, I do have a couple of quick questions. Number 1, on all of these specs, you indicate that either the GCEA or GMA or whatever associations involved with it has been notified, and they indicate they have not expressed any concerns. My question is, do they make an actual statement that this is okay, or does the lack of a response mean that they haven't expressed concern? That's question 1. And question 2, do you know the process they use in evaluating these, whether they actually go out to their membership to ask or let them know that these changes are pending, and so there's actually communication with the people that will be affected.
Mr. Chair, that's a very good question. What we do when we're preparing these is obviously we work with the management within the respective department that these are being revised, and then at the earliest possible moment prior to this meeting, we send out the draft of these specifications to the respective employee associations, and I would say probably 95% of the time we do hear back from them, and it's generally, this looks fine, or we're okay with this, or on occasion they will come back and say, well, we have concerns with this. The process they undertake with regard to checking with their employees is, I can't say for certain what each of them do. I mean, we're basically dealing with GCA and GMA for most of the time. But I do, depending on how busy they are, I do know they make an attempt to speak to people in these departments that are either holding these positions or who would be affected by them, or people that may be promoting into them, to try and get their feedback to see if they have any concerns. I can't guarantee that they always get hold of all interested parties, because that would be a lot of work, particularly to try and communicate with everybody in these areas, but they do make a very strong effort. And typically, a lot of what they attempt to do is try to see any red flags or anything that looks like it might be, adding a significant requirement or adding work duties or something like that. They try and focus on those areas to see if there's any red flags, but. That's typically the process, and we really don't bring these before you unless we have some assurance that they don't have any objection or that they're okay with them.
Okay. Thank you. That's
we'd rather not have them show up here and express their displeasure in public with the TV cameras rolling. I'd rather they do that before it gets to this point.
Well, my main concern was that there was some communication from the management of the associations with the rank and file.
Yes.
And that's one of our duties, to make sure these exams and specs are fair and equitable to everyone. And if everyone isn't notified or doesn't know about it, we're kind of spinning our wheels for nothing.
And I can say, Chair Devine, if we were going to do something on these that was really controversial, like if we were to take the principal accountant classification and decide instead of having it be a bachelor's degree, it should require a master's degree, something like that, we would probably go directly to the affected employees and discuss it with them in addition to the employee association. We try to have a good sense of what's going to be controversial and what isn't. For the most part, a lot of these you'll be seeing tonight is just a cleanup of specifications and updating of the language.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Move to approve.
Second?
We'll say unanimous consent on that. You don't need to take roll. Next item, please.
Revised class specification for approval, duplicating series.
Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, similar to the last group, this is a series, and this is a series that has not been updated for a very long time, 1992, and this is the duplicating series, and this is an area that's undergone a lot of change, both recently and obviously since 1992. The field in general, lots of different technologies involved. And so this is a series that has two classifications. One is a duplicating machine operator, and one is a duplicating shop operator. Years ago, we did have a lot more staff in this area, and there was the shop operator was more or less the supervisor of the duplicating work unit, and there were probably 2 or 3 machine operators. I believe now, org chart is accurate. We have one machine operator, and this section has been more or less consolidated. It used to be in the finance department. Now it's in the city manager's department. And the individuals work under the supervision of a senior graphics illustrator. Again, most of the language in this change relates to really different technology and things like that. And again, it's to try and reflect the most updated information on this. We also did a slight increase in the experience requirement at the shop operator level, and that's again assuming we do fill that position someday. Again, with that, if you have any questions on this series, I'd be happy to try and answer them. This completed by Alex Soto from my staff, and we have Dean Lopez from the graphics department here if you have any specific questions.
Any questions?
I have a question regarding the essential functions. The portions deleted within that section, is it safe to say that the employees who are under that title currently don't perform those functions that are deleted, or is it that there's been changes in technology, so therefore they don't perform that function anymore?
Commissioner Hatami, that would be my assumption, but I'm going to ask either Dean or Alex to step up here. I mean, and we're talking about the functions of operating offset presses.
There's a list of one.
Paper punches, offset, a lot of language relative to offset printing and stripping negatives and metal plates and such. Alex?
Good afternoon, Chair Devine, members of the Commission. Alex Soto, Human Resources Associate. It is correct. Those functions are no longer performed by the incumbent in that position. They've moved on with new technology and new equipment in the department. They've moved on to different functions.
Okay, and so the new function that they're performing, has that been added into the essential functions? Because I know we've taken stuff out, but if they're performing something new.
Well, the functions, the general functions remain the same. By and large, the machinery with which they execute those functions has been updated. So we no longer have, and Dean may be able to fill in the gaps here a little bit, but we no longer have the offset press machinery, and as we moved on to digital type equipment. Okay. So, but yes, the essential functions that are listed on the class spec are basically a comprehensive summary of what that incumbent does perform on a daily basis.
Got it.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move to approve?
Second?
Unanimous consent on that one. Next one, please.
To revise class specification for approval, licensed investigator.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a revision, again, of an existing classification. I'm sure not a lot of people are aware of this classification, but this is actually within our City Clerk's Department, licensed investigator, and these are the folks that go out and deal with the licensing and permit requirements set forth in the municipal code. This is, again, a position that takes the people out into the field most of the day. We have two of these individuals, and as with some of these specifications before, this one has not been updated since 1992. There are what I would say moderate changes to this specification, indicating that the changes in the job. Also, there's a request or a recommendation that an associate degree be added as a desirable qualification for the position. With that, present this for your review. We have Alex Soto from my staff who worked on this along with the city clerk, Artie Kasakian, is here if you have any specific questions on this job.
Any questions? Any questions?
Move to approve?
Second?
Unanimous consent. Artie can go back to work now.
I will say it's good to see Artie here for something other than
Yeah, I was going
performance
to ask.
evaluations.
Is he coming back?
Next item, please.
Job bulletin for approval, fire engineer.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a job bulletin for approval. as you've noted over the years, we don't always bring job bulletins here for the Commission's approval, and we are required to bring certain job bulletins for your approval prior to the posting of that job bulletin. Essentially, all of our executive positions must come before you. If we're taking if we're taking a bulletin and modifying a minimum requirements so that be inconsistent with its approved class specification, those are brought before you. And another example of a bulletin that we're required to bring before you are those involving safety promotional exams, whether it be the police department or fire department. This is one of them, and the fire engineer is within the sworn fire series. And again, this is a recruitment we're about to embark upon, and this bulletin is consistent with the current class specification, so we're not making any changes along those lines, but it's being brought to you as it's required. This is the next level up from firefighter. Typically, recruitment we do on a promotional basis. We believe we have a sufficient number of very strong in-house candidates for this process, and we're seeking the Commission's approval. Upon that approval, we anticipate putting the bulletin up from July 18th through July 29th, and commencing with an examination following that time period. We do have appropriate staff here. Ms. Martin from my staff is going to be working on this recruitment process, and we also have Deputy Chief Bob Doyle and Battalion Chief Anthony Arianes here as well, if you have questions.
Okay. Questions? Okay, I do have 3 academic questions, I guess. I don't know if the fire department would like to. Mr. Doyle, you want to come up? And again, bulletin is fine. I just want to get clarification. What is the difference between the fire engineer and the firefighter?
A fire engineer, Chairman Devine, good evening, Commissioners, is the apparatus operator. He's the pump operator. He drives the hook and ladder truck and the fire engine, which are 2 separate pieces of apparatus. It's a very technical position that requires a very specific skill set, and hence the promotional process. And it's a stepping stone to the position of fire captain, who is the first-line supervisor that manages the fire station.
Okay, so the firefighter then is like the entry level, and then you go to the fire engineer, and then the captain?
That's correct.
Okay. Next question is, notice under licenses and certifications that one of the items is EMT1 certificate. Will this be consistent with the changes? I know they've made, or they're in the process of making changes in your whole EMT ambulance operation, and I get confused with ALS and BLS and all that, but my question is, will the requirements for this fire engineer be consistent with or fall in step with the proposed changes for the requirements for these new EMT operators?
Yeah, Chairman Devine, it will not affect that at all. Every firefighter from the entry level to the fire chief and all the way in between is required to maintain a EMT license. So that the engineers taking this exam already have that license. They had it when they gained employment with us, and they'll have it through their whole career.
Okay. And the last question, I was noticing under the selection process, under the written and the performance tests, I saw nothing that did any testing for requirements of EMT techniques or something that they would do as an EMT. Most of these are oriented towards, operating the apparatus and gaining entry to burning buildings and things. So the question is there any type of testing for their EMT skills in this selection process?
Chairman Devine, that's negative. We evaluate those skills during the annual appraisal process of performance evaluation. That's a daily routine that we perform in our day-to-day operation. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the skills that we're looking at there are those technical skills. It's manipulating the pumps, calculating the hydraulics and the math that's associated with it. Also within that process is a piece that tests their prowess to be an acting captain. When the supervisor has to go to an officers' meeting, that engineer is required to move up and be that acting supervisor for those personnel. So you'll see a piece in that bulletin that assesses those skills as well.
Okay. That answers my questions, and is a motion?
I do have one question. Is there a management aspect to this position? And if so, how many individuals would this title manage, if any?
Commissioner, there's not a management aspect in the technical terms. There is a supervisory responsibility that in the absence of the captain, when he has to be away from the company, that engineer is required by the job bulletin to supervise the two firefighters. It's not his or her normal duties, but it's a requirement that we have to conduct the business of the fire department.
Move to approve.
Second.
Unanimous consent?
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Appreciate your coming in. And we'll have the next item.
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is the agenda forecast for our upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is on July 27th. We have the quarterly advertising budget expenditure report set for that meeting, and I believe we may have the year-end report on that as well. So that'll be good to kind of go through our advertising budget expenditures and kind of get a chance to see where our money was spent and that sort of thing. Also, on August 10th, we do have a hearing scheduled after the commission meeting, and then on August 24th, we'll have our semi-annual report on hourly employment for the entire fiscal year 2010 and 2011. In addition to that, we do anticipate more specifications, bulletins, and as you are well aware, we currently have 3 hearings, disciplinary appeal hearings going on right now. So the Commission is quite busy.
Okay. Any questions on the calendar? I'd like it to reflect that I will not be here on the September 28th meeting. Okay, we'll have the next item.
Reports and information, past due employee performance evaluation.
And Mr. Mnuchin is going to discuss that a little bit.
Okay. Well, first let me go over the ones that have absolutely no past dues. The city manager's office, city treasurer's office, fire with 215 employees, no past dues. Glendale Water and Power, 388 employees with no past dues. And also police department with 347 employees with no past dues. We have, let's see, how many first notices? 1, 2. Okay. Are we going to, should I go over the first notices too?
I think it's the second one. Or
Yeah. Okay. We have second notices, one from the city attorney's office with 1 second notices. We have community development department with 2, is that 2?
Yes.
Yeah, 2 of them, 2 second notices. We have community services and parks department with 7 actually, 7 second notices at the community service parking department. And human resources, how could that be? 2? Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Doyle, we're going to have you come in next week.
That's right.
Explain yourself here.
Okay, information services, we have 1, and library, we have 1. And we, thank God, have no third notices. Okay.
Well, it looks like overall we're doing very well, except for human resources, which I'll have to talk to Mr. Doyle about that. Okay. Next item?
Civil Service
Oh, I'm sorry.
Commission.
Mr. Doyle, do you have a comment?
Just before we go on, I again...
You want to
this-
defend yourself? That's certainly...
No, I'm not going to defend myself. No, I just want to say, again, this report is one of the legacies of Mr. Coleman, but something unusual. I read in the Glendale News Press today about Glendale Community College was, I guess, receiving their accreditation over the past year, and they received a warning notice on various areas about their accreditation standards. And I noticed from the article that one of the factors in them receiving a warning notice was had to do with employee performance evaluations. So I can't emphasize how important that is, and I really had no idea that it could affect a college's accreditation. But
Wow.
it looks like they're going to be okay. But they just received a warning notice. So anyway,
Okay, very good. Ready for the next item, please?
Civil Service Commission and our staff comments.
I'm sorry, did you have
No.
well?
Mr. Chair, there is a motion at the very back of your agenda indicating the appointment of a new city attorney. We are required by both the charter and the civil service rules to notify the commission of that of appointments to the position of city attorney and his or her deputies and assistants. And at this point, I do want to announce that, and it's been in the newspapers, but Mr. Mike Garcia has been appointed city attorney to succeed Scott Howard, who will be retiring next month. I've asked Mike to be here just to say hello to you. We're very proud to have Mike as the city attorney. He's been with us about 6 years. He's spent his entire legal career working in the municipal law fields in both the private sector and the public sector, and he's a graduate of UC San Diego, bachelor's degree, and his Juris Doctorate from the University of California Hastings Law School, which is a very highly regarded law school. So we're very proud to have him as city attorney. He has big shoes to fill, Scott Howard, but we're all very happy to have him here and present him for the commission.
Good. I, for one, would like to congratulate you. I think selection was outstanding, and you just mentioned that he had big shoes to fill. Well, I've worked with Mike on various boards and commissions through the years, and as far as I'm concerned, he's filled those shoes. He's outstanding. I was very happy to hear about your appointment. So congratulations to you. We look forward to working with you or your staff, and we appreciate it. So.
Likewise, I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Garcia, and when we worked together on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I think you are a phenomenal asset to this community, and we are absolutely lucky to have you. So, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Chairman Devine, members of the Commission, thank you very much. And I'm glad to be here, and obviously it was an honor when the Council appointed me, and I'm excited to work with all the commissions, and obviously having worked previously with Mr. Devine and Mr. Manukian, I'm very excited for this opportunity. If there's any time that you have any legal issues that you need to discuss with us, obviously Ms. Farpetian, other members of our office are always here to assist you, and myself as well. And if you ever have any questions, I have an open door policy. You're free to come in and call and come in and see me. And thank you again. I really appreciate your comments.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Did you want to say anything about your new boss, or?
But the only comment is we were very sad to see Scott go, but more than thrilled to have Mike Garcia. We've worked with him, and we're very proud to have him as our city attorney, as our new leader. So welcome aboard.
One of the things that I told the council when they appointed me was that I was really grateful for Scott for having given me the opportunity when he hired me, but also having developed a great staff. And we do have a great staff, and it's very stable, and so that's something I'm really excited about. So thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, next item.
Closed session, public employee discipline.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, I'm sorry.
before we go to closed session, I do have one other announcement. I'd be remiss if I didn't convey to you all the big news that hit this afternoon. That Mr. Starbird has announced his retirement after some 40 years in the public sector, city manager at 3 different cities, and he's been with us for 14 years, which is in the lifetime of city manager. That's a very long tenure. He's had a very, very successful run here. The news just broke today, and we're all a little bit of shock at the moment, but we're very happy for Jim. Outstanding city manager, a great inspiration to many of us, and we'll be sad to see him leave, but We do want to wish him the best. He's planning to retire at some point towards the end of the year, so he gave plenty of notice to deal with the news. So anyway, I wanted to announce that
Thank
as
you.
well.
Appreciate that information. Generally, we would go to closed session and then come back out and report out and adjourn. However, at this point, if our attorney will permit us, I'd like to adjourn the meeting now, since there will be nothing to report out after the closed session. So would that be proper protocol for us to adjourn now and then go into closed session?
No, because if you adjourn the meeting, then you wouldn't be able to go into closed session, because closed session is a part of this meeting. However, I do believe that you've expressed your sentiments about adjourning in Mr. Coleman's memory. So I think that is a part of the record. If that's what you were...
Okay, well, my point is that when we go into closed session, there will only be two commissioners, because there's only two of us that will stay for the closed session for the assignment of dates. When we come back out, there will no longer be a quorum.
Then that would be appropriate to do at this time.
Thank you. So at this point, I would like to adjourn in the memory of Roy Coleman, and we'll adjourn the meeting and then go into unofficial closed session, I guess you'd call it. So we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned.